brought to you by the New Yorker Radio and WNYC Studios. This is Sophine's Scintillating Scene, a weekly podcast program based in New York, bringing my take on the latest novels, movies, and even plays. Let's jump right into today's topic. For as long as men and women can remember, there has always been an imbalance, even inequality between male and female on numerous social and political platforms. The advocacy for women can be dated back since the 16th century. This is in regards to the Renaissance feminism. From there on, feminists have protested and challenged for equal rights with several social and political movements. We can see this ideology in various types of media, ranging from your daily soap opera to novels from the 1900s. In today's episode of SSS, we will be focusing on the classic The Great Gatsby, written by the one and only F. Scott Fitzgerald. When approaching this traditional piece with a feminist lens, it helps guide the reader to understand the social normalities that women face during this specific time period and how it influenced the lives of women and men. The best way to see the oppression of women and patriarchal dominance is through a variety of characters, including Daisy Buchanan, Jay Gatsby, and Tom Buchanan. Let's begin. Now, by definition, the feminist approach examines the role of women and their exclusion, but let's focus more on the novel. It was set in 1922, being seen in the Roaring Twenties. Though the city was prospering, society at the time was very different from today. Gender politics and social movements were a sign of the times changing the way that men and women's roles were viewed. However, the norms for either gender still differed greatly. Traditional family life was valued, beginning with the beautiful, money-hungry Daisy Buchanan. Now, I start off by calling her money-hungry. Why, you may ask? Well, being married to one of the wealthiest men in the East Egg, Tom, we will analyze later on. Now back to Daisy. Her herself has her own idea of woman and their purpose, as revealed in chapter 1, when speaking about her future daughter, hoping that she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. Immediately, the audience is exposed to Daisy's sentiments towards females, on how she believes women not to be intelligent and validating the claim of traditional women's roles since birth. Furthermore, indicating how Daisy conforms to societal normalities regarding the status of woman to such extent where her unborn child must do the same. Backtracking a bit, regarding the thought of Daisy being money-hungry, it's revealed through the text that Gatsby and Daisy were once together, but split due to Gatsby going to war. She instead married Tom, who lured her with a pearl necklace worth a whopping $350,000. You can do a lot with that money. It is unmistakable that Daisy is motivated by the materialistic possessions, excessively concerned with physical comforts and the acquisition of wealth, rather than having a true connection with a human being, which she once did with Jay Gatsby. To reinforce this idea of Daisy marrying for status, during a heated argument between Tom and Gatsby, Jay strongly alleges that Daisy doesn't love Tom, and she never did love Tom. She only married Tom because Jay Gatsby was poor. This heavily connects to the status of women in the 1920s, that it was encouraged for women to believe that their economic security and social status depended on a successful marriage, hence Daisy Buchanan. What a character. Now, let us do a quick 180 and guide our attention to the other side of the spectrum where lies Tom Buchanan. He is rich economically, but not too wealthy when it comes to morals. His sexist remarks and behavior throughout the novel is crucial to draw attention due to how heavily the feminist approach revolves around him. It is important to take note of Tom's strength and masculinity. When he was first introduced as a famous football player who was wealthy, as he owns a large mansion by the bay, and later on, Nick emphasizes Tom's strength by comparing himself to a checker piece, while Tom is a player. In these two cases, it is evident that Tom Buchanan is a strong and wealthy man, which will tie into my next point regarding his aggressive and questionable behavior. The initial indicator that Tom may be abusive is in chapter 1, when Nick visits the Buchanan couple for dinner, and Daisy presents a black and blue finger, alleging that Tom has hurt her. This dilemma between the couple demonstrates to the audience of the relationship that they have, that Tom's male dominance is asserted to the point where Daisy ends up getting the short end of the stick. Even though Tom's abusiveness attributes regarding Daisy are not as prominent as the novel continues, his behavior cannot go unnoticed. More specifically, his actions in regard to Myrtle Wilson, the mistress of Tom. She is important when discussing the sexism and abusiveness that Tom portrays. In chapter 2, Myrtle continues to speak of Daisy, repeating her name several times after being told by Tom not to. Eventually, Tom snaps, backhanding Myrtle in the nose, causing it to break. Though he is defending Daisy's name, this is an impeccable example of Tom's persona and his aggressive nature where he shows absolutely no respect towards women. This is also shown when the Buchanans, Nick, Jordan, and Gatsby plan to go to town. Tom was not fond of this idea from the get-go. When Daisy suggested the idea, he was confused, not seeing the idea of going to town and where women get these notions in their head. This misogynist remark portrays Tom's stubbornness as he attacks women in general, all because Daisy needed to go to town. Soon after, as Tom and Daisy walk towards the car, he presses her hand with his hand toward Gatsby's car, once again demonstrating Tom's aggressive and pushy nature when it comes to women. There are many indications that Tom Buchanan's personality is heavily associated with sexism, proven by the abusive nature of his actions and dialogue that are presented to the reader. Now, if you haven't noticed yet, the book is called The Great Gatsby, emphasis on great. But what makes him so great is his status, the money and fame he acquired for himself, the parties and luxurious cars. But these are all materialistic. Nothing about him as a person is necessarily great. There has been a trend in this podcast, speaking of the oppression that men cause and the women who are affected. But now, we touch upon Gatsby. He's seen as a young, lavish-looking man, but nobody knows of his past. As mentioned previously, he was once with the beautiful Daisy Buchanan, and ever since they split apart, he's been on a mission to win her back. Gatsby went through everything to win back Daisy, getting into a shady bootlegging business to be drowning in enough money to get back with Daisy. She's almost seen as a prize, a possession that Gatsby must have. In Chapter 8, Gatsby reveals that what attracted him to get Daisy. He explains that it excited him that many men had already loved Daisy. It increased her value in his eyes. Gatsby saw value in Daisy instead of appreciating her as a genuine human being who has hopes, dreams, aspirations, and attempting to have an actual bond with her. He pursued her as a prize that he must be a winner of. Continuing with Gatsby's attempt to win over Daisy, he resorts to his materialistic belongings in an attempt to attract Daisy, instead of trying to build a connection. After insisting that Daisy comes over, he heads toward his closet where Gatsby tosses his shirts from his closet to Nick. Daisy tears up, claiming she has never seen such beautiful shirts before. In the scene, Gatsby's efforts to present his way of living to Daisy, where she becomes overwhelmed by his luxurious, satisfying life. This has been the attitude that men had in this time. Shown in both Gatsby and Tom, they treat women as possessions and prizes, something they must have in order to complete their lives. Though both men present this behavior, in this case, Gatsby relies on his materialistic possessions rather than an emotional effort to win Daisy. Usually, when we read a book or watch a movie, we don't necessarily look beyond the acting and plot, which can be dull and worse in the movie. Focusing on the small details like we did in today's episode can broaden our understanding and allow us to see things from a new perspective. The main theme of The Great Gatsby is chasing the American dream. When we use the feminist lens, we revealed how things were in the 1920s regarding gender roles that men pertained to and the oppression women faced. As always, we do thank you for listening. There are millions of podcasts out there, and you chose ours to listen to. We work based on your support, so please leave a comment, a like, and perhaps a subscription. Let a friend, family member, or even a stranger know about what we do. Anyways, tune in next week for our analysis on another classic movie, Paul Blart, Mall Cop, one of my favorites. But for now, SSS is off the air. Thank you.